This video will show you how to replace your vehicle's master cylinder on this Toyota Corolla. This will be located along the driver's side of your engine compartment. Let's get into it. Now the first thing we want to do is make sure that all the bleeder screws on each one of our brakes opens as it should. Otherwise, you might have to replace another braking component. After dealing with all the bleeder screws and confirming that they open properly, we're back under the hood. To be able to gain access to where our master cylinder is, I like to remove my air filter housing and my air filter. Let's start by disconnecting the air inlet hose from the air filter housing. I use some penetrant on this. Can loosen that clamp. Should be able to take hold of the hose, give it a wiggle. It's going to want to start sliding off. You can see one of the clips over here. The other one's right on the other side. Pop that off there. Now for that upper air filter housing, all you have to do is push it over towards the side. You don't have to remove any more electrical wiring harnesses here. Remove your air filter, give it a close inspection. If it's dirty, replace it. This one looks fine. Now we have a clear view of the master cylinder. Let's make our way up along the top here. If you were to dislodge this rubber seal by simply taking hold of it and pulling it towards the driver's side a little bit, it's going to dislodge from that plastic portion. Now up along the top here, there's a plastic panel. Let's slide that out of place. Now up along the top area here, remove your master cylinder cap. I'll set that aside. Inside of the master cylinder reservoir, typically you're going to find some sort of screen. We want to remove that so we can also remove as much fluid from inside of the master cylinder reservoir and master cylinder as possible. To remove the screen, sometimes it's easiest if you use an angled pick. Other times you can just reach in there by hand and try to remove it. Of course, you do want to make sure you're wearing rubber gloves at any time you're reaching in towards brake fluid. A quick note about dealing with brake fluid: you do not want to get any on your automotive paint. It will remove the paint from your metal. If you do happen to get any on the paint, just use some water and wash it down. To remove the fluid, we're going to use a fluid extractor. These come in all different shapes and sizes. We'll collect and recycle all fluid as necessary. Once you have that empty, we can continue on by reinstalling our cap and we'll move along. Now, if you are looking along the inboard side of the master cylinder towards where the engine is, you're going to find your level sensor electrical connector. Squeeze in on the locking tab and pull it out of place. A quick inspection for corrosion and set that aside. The next thing we want to do is put something underneath each one of our two brake lines leading into the master cylinder. As I mentioned, brake fluid will cause issues with paint, so we want to make sure that we collect that fluid. You can also use a small collection receptacle in this area if you have one small enough that fits in. Once you have protection under the area, we're going to remove our brake lines using a 12mm. Typically to start, I like to use a flare end wrench. That way there, if it's tight, we don't strip anything out. We do want to reuse these brake lines, of course. Otherwise, if you damage them, you're going to have to replace them. We'll get some movement from that one. Now I'm just going to switch my wrench to an open end wrench. It's a little easier. Okay, that fitting let go. You can see brake fluid making its way out of this area. We're collecting it as needed. Once you have one line off, repeat the process for the next line. Now that we have that brake line disconnected, if you were to follow the brake line down, you're going to find that there's a white plastic locking connector holding our two brake lines together. To be able to remove the brake line, we want to go ahead and dislodge at least one line from this connector, and then that plastic connector can just stay on the other line. For this, typically you can just reach in by hand, take hold of it, give it a quick pivot, it's going to slide out and away. There we are. Now we can take that line and start dislodging it from the master cylinder. Perfect. That gives us plenty of room in this area to gain access to our next brake line. We're using a 12mm for this one as well. Just like before, I'm starting with my flare wrench. Okay. We've got some movement there. Switch to the open end wrench. There we are. Now you're not going to fully be able to remove that brake line from the master cylinder yet. We have to dislodge the master cylinder first. Now if you were looking along the inboard side here, close to your brake booster, you're going to find that you have two 12mm headed mounting nuts holding a bracket in place. That bracket is holding brake lines, and it's also holding the master cylinder in place as well. Let's start removing our two 12mm mounting bolts. One up along the top here. Let's get this next one down here, bottom corner. With the hardware out of place, let's reach in behind this area and carefully tug on the bracket. Now that bracket that you can see does have brake lines attached to it, so it's not going to go very far. We just need to remove it from the studs far enough that we can also grab that master cylinder and pull that straight forward to remove it from those studs as well. There we are, that's plenty of movement. Take hold of the master cylinder, we'll go ahead and give that a tug straight forward, removing it from the vehicle. Now we're just caught on the bracket down there. Slide that out of the way. And remove your master cylinder. There it is, friend. Now with the master cylinder removed, the next thing we'll do is inspect our brake booster port where the master cylinder fits. Ensure you don't see any brake fluid inside of the booster. If you do, the brake booster may have to be replaced as well. We'll just give this a quick wipe and a close inspection. After inspecting that, let's also inspect our brake lines. We have a clear view of those now. Just double check to make sure they're not rotted and weak. They need to be reusable. Both those fittings look good as well. Now it's time to prepare the master cylinder for installation. The first thing we want to do is bench bleed it. Essentially, the master cylinder is going to be filled with air, but it needs to be filled with fluid. So for this, what we're going to do, we have it on the bench in a vise. We need to have a kit that can screw into the ports on the master cylinder itself, and then tubes that lead up and into the reservoir. So we'll just find an adapter that fits, or a fitting, and start that in by hand. Now that I have it started in by hand, it's still flexible. I'm going to take the line and bring it down and into the master cylinder, at least approximately halfway. Let's get our next line in there. Get that one started in, we'll just flex it down into position. Lightly snug each one of the lines. You don't need to crank them down. We don't want to damage anything. We just don't want to have a leak as we continue on. Now once you have your line secured, we're going to top this off with brand new .3 brake fluid. We want to make sure that the fluid level is higher than the very end of the lines that we have down inside the reservoir. As I mentioned, the line should be approximately halfway down if possible. Now we're going to pay attention down at this portion of the master cylinder. This is your plunger rod. We're going to use a brass punch. You can also use a wooden dowel. You don't want to use a screwdriver because we don't want to cause any damage. We're going to take this and bring it directly along this area. Now we're going to start pressing this in, and fluid will start making its way from inside the reservoir, down into the master cylinder, up through the lines, and all the way back into the reservoir. At first, you're going to see a lot of air bubbles. We need to continue this process until you see only fluid. Top off the master cylinder as required. After you've bench bled the master cylinder before removing the lines, it'll be helpful if you have some plastic plugs that can fit inside the ports. Once you start removing the lines, fluid will make its way out. Have your collection receptacle under this area so you can collect all that fluid as needed. Let's lift the lines up and out of here. Start with our first line. As I mentioned, fluid is going to come out of this area. Obviously, we don't want to let that master cylinder drain out. If you do, you're going to have to re-bench bleed. Lightly bottom that out. There's one line. Let's go ahead and repeat the process for the next line. Install your master cylinder cap, and we can get this over to the vehicle. Prior to bringing this in towards that brake booster, I'm applying lubricant around my sealing O-ring. We'll start bringing this in towards the brake booster, resting it over each one of those two studs, then the bracket, and after that, each one of our two mounting nuts. Okay, so we've got the master cylinder up against there. Let's get the bracket in place as well. Two 12mm mounting nuts, one for each side. They're both started on. Let's snug them up and torque those to 9 foot-pounds. We get our torque wrench. We'll just double check the torque on those. Now let's pay attention to our brake lines. We have those plastic plugs. We're going to remove one at a time, start in the line. Go for the inboard one or the rearward one. Fluid will come out as you remove these plugs. We do have protection underneath this area to collect that fluid. All right, there's one line. We'll just get that started in, hopefully. That one started on. Let's snug it up. Okay, so right there is bottomed out. I'm going to switch my wrenches. Let's get our flare wrench on there. Okay. That one's nice and tight. Move along to the next brake line. Same process, start it in by hand and snug it up. That one's snug with the open end wrench. Let's switch to our flare wrench. We're just going to make sure that we have a good seal on our master cylinder cap, and we'll continue on with cleaning the mess in this area. We'll give everything a thorough cleaning so we're sure we can double check for leaks once everything's done. Now it's time for our plastic clip over each one of those two lines. I'm just going to reach in here and we'll bring that right on over, latch it in. It's time for our level sensor wiring harness. Line it up, press it in, listen for a click from that. Let's remove our collection apparatus from underneath this area. I'm just using some pads. Let's install our air filter and upper air filter housing. Just make sure we have the air filter in the proper orientation. Start bringing the housing down into position. As we bring this down, you want to start along the front. So we're just going to go ahead and line up those alignment tabs. You may have to lift up on the rearward portion, press it in. Once you have it pressed forward and down, continue on with your two locking clips, one for each side. We have our wiring harness along the back side there. Slide that into position. It's time for the air inlet tube. We'll slide that onto the upper air filter housing as far as possible and tighten our 10mm headed clamp. Double check to make sure your clamp's properly secured. You do not want to have a leak in this area. You're going to have a running condition. Now that we have the master topped off with brand new brake fluid, we made our way to the right rear brakes, or passenger side rear. We're going to start the bleeding sequence here. Now for the bleeding sequence, we're going to start at the passenger side rear, and then we're going to move to the driver's side front, diagonally. After we've bled that brake, we have to make our way up to the master cylinder, and we're going to check and top off that fluid. Once we've completed that, we're going to the driver's side rear and then to the passenger side front. Once we've completed those two brakes, we're back up at the master cylinder. Now you can do this with a hose, you can use a small pan if necessary, whatever's best for you. This is going to be easiest if you have a second person to bleed the brakes. The person inside the vehicle is going to pump up the brake pedal till it feels nice and firm, approximately 3 to 5 times. They're going to hold it and let me know. While they're holding it, I'm going to open up the bleeder screw and fluid will come out of the bleeder screw. Once the fluid stops, I'm going to close the bleeder screw and I'm going to ask them to pump again. After it's firm, we're going to repeat this process several times until we know that we have only clean brake fluid making its way out of the system. Go ahead and pump up the brake pedal, please. I've got my hose on here. You should be able to see some fluid make its way out. Go ahead and pump. Go ahead and pump. You can release. Now at this point, I saw several times that I had only clean brake fluid making its way out of the system. Obviously, you want to continue this process until you've confirmed the same. Assuming you have, go ahead and remove your apparatus and clean up the mess in this area. Now as for the left front brakes, for the bleeder screw, we're going to be using an 8mm. We have our collection receptacles here so we can collect and recycle that fluid. We'll get this all in place. Go ahead and pump up the brakes, please. Go ahead and pump. That's looking good. Go ahead and pump. All right, just one more time here. This is looking good. Now, just like before, repeat this process as many times as necessary to confirm that you have only clean brake fluid making its way out and definitely no air. After you've completed that, go ahead and clean up your mess, reinstall your bleeder screw cover. We're making our way up to the master cylinder next. All the brakes have been bled. Remove your master cylinder cap, and we can continue on topping off that fluid all the way up to the maximum line. Once you're sure it's topped off, reinstall your cover, clean any mess. We can install our cover on this area. Listen for an audible click. Reinstall your protective seal. You can see all of our small hooks here. Looking along the bottom of the seal, there's circular ports. Just go ahead and stretch it as necessary to slide it into position. Okay, friend, we finished the installation of our master cylinder. Double check for leaks. After that, go ahead and close the hood, take your vehicle for a road test. Thanks for watching.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.